welcome to this meeting, which is basically a continuation of where we were about a week ago. I think it was. I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Thursday. Tuesday, when we were questioning witnesses, but then we debated a motion. So I first of all, I want to thank all the witnesses for being here. Mr. Wolfish, and really nice to see you in person. And it's really, we really appreciate that you've come back for this 1 hour, because it's such an interesting topic, and there's so much to learn from all of you. I can inform the committee that all the sound tests have been done for the witnesses who are online, and so we're essentially ready to go. And we're going to start. We just started the second round, the 5-minute round, when we started debating the motion. So I'm going to start. We're into the 5-minute round. At the top of the 5-minute round, and we'll start with Mr. Leslie for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last week, the Liberal government finally realized that the carbon tax is punishing Canadians, and have decided to put a pause on it for home heating for certain voters. My question to ECCC was, were you consulted, or was this just a political decision? And secondly, if you were consulted, when did that process start, and what was the advice
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Yes.
I question the relevance of the line of questioning.
Yeah, so do I, in fact. So I don't think this is relevant.
The carbon tax is most certainly related.
It's got nothing to do with wastewater.
How is that?
So I'm going to rule that, just out of order. We only have an hour. We've already interrupted these witnesses once before. There will be ample opportunity, I'm sure, to talk about carbon pricing. So if you could get back on the topic of the water study, Mr. Leslie, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Well, we'll start with a CBC News article earlier this year that stated the federal government is still determining precisely what the Canadian Water Agency will do. It adds that it's unknown how many employees are going to be based there. What is the CWA actually going to do? How many staff are they going to have? And what are they going to do in terms of actually leading water management? In terms of the reports that we got from the questionnaires by the various departments, there's a tremendous amount of duplication and overlap and lack of standardization. With the funding that's been allocated to the CWA, is it feasible that it's actually going to provide better coordination relating to water management in this country?
Thank you for the question. So the Canada Water Agency's focus will be on the coordination of efforts on a number of fronts, one across the federal house, recognizing that there are over 20 departments that have roles and responsibilities with regard to water. The second particular focus will be around to be able to coordinate with provinces and territories with respect to the federal framework and the respect of roles of provinces and territories in water, and the need to collaborate on transboundary waters in particular. Third area of responsibility that we will be focusing on is the engagement and work with Indigenous peoples, and making sure that we have Indigenous peoples and integrate the Indigenous rights framework into the work that we do. With that, we hope that we are going to be able to respect the roles and responsibilities of provinces while providing leadership on federal policy for water.
So how do you hope to be able to do that? In what process are you actually going to start engaging with the provinces? If according to them, they weren't engaged in the development early on of the Canadian Water Agency, at what point and how are you going to go about actually engaging with the provinces to make sure their jurisdiction is respected, particularly in light of their rightful concerns as highlighted by the Supreme Court decision on Bill C-69?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we are conscious of the reference from the Supreme Court, and we do respect it, and we will respect it. We started our consultations with the provinces and territories in 2000. We shared a paper called towards creating the Canada Water Agency. We held a number of bilateral calls with provinces and territories along the way, and then we also used the Council of the Canadian Council of Ministers on Environment to have conversations. We'll continue to use the CCME as a vehicle for conversations on a multilateral forum. We'll continue to use bilateral discussions, particularly as we implement the Freshwater Action Plan, and the mechanisms that we use with provinces and territories to manage the freshwater ecosystem initiatives. We have MOU with Manitoba. We have an agreement with Quebec. We have an agreement with Ontario. We'll continue to be working through those agreements and look to coordinate with provinces on each of the freshwater ecosystems.
What have the provinces outlaid to you in those discussions in terms of what their concerns are? And I suspect in the case of Saskatchewan, they took great issue with Environment Canada going trespassing on privately owned farmland to do water sampling last summer. What other concerns have the provinces outlaid in terms of the potential or likely stepping on their jurisdiction through the Canadian Water Agency?
We recognize that the provinces and territories have an important regulatory role to play with drinking water, with source water, non-source water protection. We'll continue to respect those roles and responsibilities. Our job is to want to work with provinces and territories, with stakeholders, with partners, with Indigenous communities around the Freshwater Action Plan. We've identified 8 transboundary watersheds across the country that require collaboration and coordination. We've got some funding, $650 million of funding to help coordinate action in those areas, including around the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence, the Woodsticka St. John River in New Brunswick, Lake Winnipeg Basin, and we'll continue to, Fraser, the Mackenzie, will continue to collaborate with the provinces on identifying priorities and putting in place measures to help with non-point source protection and improving water quality in those areas.
So it's been stated that there's legislation coming. The agency, which is it going to be an agency or is it going to be a branch under ECCC? How many people are expected to be employed there? Are they all going to be based out of Winnipeg? And when could we expect this operational aspect of the agency to actually happen?
Thank you. So the agency will be created in 2 steps. The first step we've already taken action on in June with my appointment as the acting assistant deputy minister. It became a branch within Environment and Climate Change Canada. I report directly to the deputy minister, and I support the minister as well as the parliamentary secretary to the prime minister on the work that we do within the branch. The government has committed to tabling legislation to create the standalone agency. That legislation will be tabled according to the priorities of the government. When that legislation passes, we'll be able to move forward to create a standalone agency reporting directly to the minister. We have started to build our presence in Winnipeg. We have already had a poster out to recruit staff, and we have a presence already there working on the Lake Winnipeg Basin, and we'll continue to build our presence there after the.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, on passe. Merci, Monsieur Leslie. Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leslie and Mr. Trish. We'll now move over to Mr. Ali. Mr. Ali, you have the floor.
I'd like to thank all the officials for being here today again. My question is towards ECCC. That Environment and Climate Change Canada has an equivalency agreement with Quebec for the implementation of federal wastewater regulations. So my first question in this regard is, how does the federal government ensures accountability?
Thank you. So in equivalency agreements, we have 2 mechanisms for evaluating accountability. One, provinces share information, data on compliance with their regulation, so we can verify how the compliance is with their regulation, and we also have mechanism to review the equivalency agreement periodically.
Thank you. How does the federal government ensure that the province is respecting federal wastewater standards in implementing the regulations on behalf of the federal government?
So in the equivalency agreement, the mechanism to share the data, so it's the same 2 mechanism. So provinces have their accountability for complying with their regulation. They submit that data to us that we look at, and if there's an issue that raised, we can discuss with the province when we review the equivalency agreement.
Thank you. Is ECCC negotiating equivalency agreements with other provinces?
Not at this point. We have 2 equivalency agreements, one with Quebec and one with Yukon. That's it.
Thank you. The federal government has launched a process for amending wastewater regulations, which will ostensibly improve planning of system maintenance. Can you update the committee on the status of the process, please?
A question?
Go ahead.
So we issued what we would call a discussion paper in May of this year, and for a 60-day consultation period. And that consultation period has closed, and we are going to be incorporating those comments into the Canada Gazette 2, which we hope we are on target to publish next year in 2024. And if I can just take a step back, the amendments were designed to do three main things. One was to improve what we currently have for what we call the temporary bypass authorization. So when in the first iteration of the wastewater effluent release regulations went into effect, there were provisions that allowed owners and operators of wastewater systems to get authorization to bypass the treatment for a specific period of time and discharge undertreated water at the final discharge point while they were undertaking very needed maintenance, repairs, and upgrades. What we realized over the past few years since the regulation went into effect is that we did not have provisions that would allow us to have an awareness and ensure that there was sufficient mitigation to the receiving environment for bypasses that would take place in other parts of the facility, but not at the final discharge point. So that's one thing that the regulations are being amended to update.
Thank you. In terms of consulting with the First Nation, one of the recommendations that emerged from the postmortem of the 2015 controlled wastewater release in Montreal was to improve the protocol for consulting First Nations who might potentially be affected in case of future releases. My question is what has been done so far in this regard?
Of points in what we currently do, and then I'll allow my colleague Caroline Blay to add to that. With respect to any of the bypasses that owners and operators apply for authorization for, they need to send out authorization into ECCC at least 45 days ahead of the planned release. And before that, they do need to consult and engage with the local community, including Indigenous communities, as to the impacts so that there's awareness and understanding of the impacts and capture concerns with respect to the bypass. And that information has to come with the application for a temporary authorization bypass. So that's one element of consultation that we do.
Yeah.
That includes the public, Indigenous communities, and communities downstream of the treatment.
Thank you.
And then in the recent bypass...
Thank you. Well, we'll just, if it can be brief in terms of the recent bypass, yeah, please, that might be
The recent
useful.
bypass authorization also included engagements with Indigenous communities.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We won't be able to go to you, Madame Blais, because we're over time, but somebody else can raise the issue, or you can answer the question when answering something else. Madame Posé, 2 minutes et demie, s'il vous plaît.
2.5 minutes, Ms. Posé. Thank you for having returned to see us. It's very kind of you. And thank you, Mr. Wolfish, for the written response that you sent to us. I have read it before our meeting today. What I've understood from your presentation of the first day is that you seem to be relying a good deal on the sort of forum, the Canadian Forum, Council of Environmental Ministers, Ministers of the Environment. Research I've carried out before coming in, though, today turned up nothing about this forum. So how does it add any value to the agency, the CWA? Because the impression I have so far is that not really much is being carried out by that group, but the CWA seems to be relying on its work. So please explain how it is helpful, if it is.
Council for Ministers of the Environment is a council that meets fairly regularly at the deputy level, the ministerial level, and at the officials level. There is a working group that does work on water issues, and we've been using that forum as a way to have conversations around water, and other departments have also been using that forum as a way to have conversations around water for several years. We'll continue to use that as a multilateral forum. In addition to that, we've been reaching out to provinces and territories on a bilateral level will. And then when necessary, as we continue our work, we'll bring it together a committee of officials at the Assistant Deputy Minister level or at the officials level to support water.
D'accord. Je me permets donc.
Very well. Then I understand that many ministers work with this forum, the CCME, right? All right. Mr. Wolfish, earlier I was a little surprised to learn, by the way you mentioned groups or basins that were chosen. You said 8. I have found 7. What I learned is that none of them are in Quebec. These are all water areas on which funding has been spent. Please justify none of them are in Quebec. I would say there is one in Quebec. It's the Plan Action pour le Saint-Laurent, the Action Plan for the St. Lawrence Seaway, an initiative undertaken with the government of Quebec. There's an agreement with Quebec regarding this project. We have a budget to support activities in Quebec. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Wolfish. And Ms. Posey, Mr. Bachrach, 2.5 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for coming back and joining us once again. I'd like to start with some questions about the Watershed Security and Strategy Fund that British Columbia has brought forward. Starting with the question around how it is informing the development of the Canada Water Agency. Could you speak a little bit to how the work in British Columbia is informing your work federally?
Thank you. So we've had some initial conversations with British Columbia. I actually received a briefing just last week from British Columbia around their initiatives. We've identified the Fraser Basin as one of the ecosystem initiatives, and we were looking forward to getting together with British Columbia to work around what can be some of the priorities, with some of these for science, for monitoring, and for restoration activities. And we're just starting those discussions now.
Obviously, when it comes to the national conversation around fresh water, the Great Lakes deserve a focus. They're very important. For some British Columbians, it might seem like there's a risk that it will draw too much of the focus of the Canada Water Agency eastward. Are there conversations within ECCC about matching the British Columbia government's commitment to funding freshwater protection?
So we haven't moved in that direction yet. At this stage, what we're looking to do is establish the agency and then from there hold our conversations with the provinces and territories around the ecosystem initiatives. I think one of the reasons for why Winnipeg was chosen as a headquarter is to be able to provide a bit more of a diverse view of freshwater across Canada and the various needs, recognizing that indeed in Canada freshwater takes on a very regional focus and the needs vary across the country.
And could you provide a little bit of detail as to how Indigenous co-governance and management will, the role that it's going to play in the Canada Water Agency?
That's an important question. It's one where we're just starting to work through and to develop advice for the minister. We've had some conversations with the Assembly of First Nations. I've also reached out at regional levels and regional organizations, and I have started to engage with Métis. We recognize the importance of bringing into the work of the agency and into the review of the Canada Water Act the Indigenous rights framework. What we want to do is engage with our partners around what could that look like, what are the issues that they want to discuss, and then from that perspective, take a couple of years to review and modernize the Canada Water Act.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bachrach.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Crown, 5 minutes.
And thank you to all the witnesses for joining us here today, particularly Mr. Wolfish. I hope you didn't fly all the way back to Ottawa solely on account of the technical issues last week. But
I'm based here.
Okay, very good, very good. So has the Canada Water Agency's head office been finalized in Winnipeg? Is that where you were joining us from last week?
I was joining you from Winnipeg for a few reasons. One, to meet the staff that were there. I was appointed in June, so it was my opportunity to connect with the team. While there, I also took the opportunity to meet with important partners, Indigenous partners and stakeholders around the work that we were doing. We are starting to build our staff presence in Winnipeg. We've posted a recruitment for a few officials, and Winnipeg, I guess, to be officially selected will depend upon Parliament and its decisions around creating the water agency, and then an order that would be required subsequent to establish officially the headquarters in Winnipeg.
Okay, but has the headquarters been finalized, or is that still in the works?
It's being finalized in the sense that it's being worked into our plans, our priority setting, our funding, our discussions with Treasury Board, but the final decision will rest with Parliament if when the legislation to create the agency is tabled.
And last week you mentioned that there was $21 million allocated to support the creation of the water agency. Are the new offices being created out of that $21 million?
So we're going to be using the offices of Environment and Climate Change Canada for the short term until we build our presence over the next few years. But that money will be used for supporting the mandate of the agency, the partnerships, the collaborations, the coordination, including the engagement of Indigenous partners in the work that we talked about on co-development.
And on the website, it says that there would also be regional offices across the country. Any idea of how many and where?
Yep. So we will have an office in Dartmouth. We have an office in Quebec. I'm going there tonight, actually. We'll have an office, small presence in Gatineau. We'll have an office in Toronto and in Burlington, an office in Winnipeg, a regional office and a headquarter office, and then an office in Vancouver.
Okay, and last week you said that you were waiting on legislation that will fully establish the Canada Water Agency as a standalone agency. Do you have any idea what the legislation will look like?
It'll be an administrative act to create the agency, noting that the agency is created and reports to the minister. And I'll talk about the status of the staff. But of course, Parliament will have the decisions to make about the final, the content of the legislation.
So what happens to the $21 million to set up the agency if the legislation doesn't pass?
So if the agency doesn't pass Parliament, we'll work with Treasury Board and with the department around what pieces of that funding can be used in different ways or not used. And more importantly, the work of the agency right now is underway as a branch within Environment and Climate Change Canada, and that work to engage Indigenous peoples on our mandate, the review of the Canada Water Act, those are important pieces that we're continuing to push ahead as a branch within Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Okay, very good. Mr. Chair, I would like to hand my remaining time over to my colleague, Dan Mazier.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the following motion. The committee report to the House of Commons that A, the Prime Minister's public opinion is plummeting because of his inflationary policies and carbon taxes that are driving up the cost of living for Canadians, and as the Prime Minister, he is the only concern about his re-election. B, the Prime Minister has announced a measure that will not provide tax relief to 97% of Canadians. C, Canadians are still paying his carbon tax on gas, heat, and groceries. D, the carbon tax will continue to go up every year. E, the Prime Minister has doubled down on his plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. F, the Liberals, NDP, and Bloc voted to keep the carbon tax.
Just a second, Mr. Yes, point of order. Yes, yes, Mr.
My point of order is to express that I'm sorry to the witnesses that we're doing this again. The reason that you're back and the reason you had to come back and take time out of your precious work days is because we had a delay in the previous meeting. And it seems like the Conservative members would just like to do that again.
Yeah, it's not really a point of order,
show
Mr. Vancouver.
absolute disregard for other people's time. You have absolutely no respect for people and their willingness to come to this committee. And I'm extremely disappointed that for some reason you want to play political games during this important meeting. I'm disgusted.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, just a moment, though.
I had the floor, Chair.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to you. I'm pausing just for a second. So go ahead, Mr. Mason.
So, Chair, I'll take back to point F. The Liberals, the NDP, and Bloc voted to keep the carbon tax on home heating just 1 year ago. The committee recognized that the carbon tax is a plan, a tax plan, not an environmental plan, and call on the Liberal government to immediately abolish carbon tax 1 and carbon tax 2, and that the committee report its opinion to the House.
Mr. Chair, sorry, point of order.
Point of order.
Yeah. Can we dispense the reading of the motion? Do we have to?
Well,
it's been distributed,
UC
right?
would require a UC, no, to dispense the reading of the motion.
No, I have the floor.
Yeah, okay, so, no,
I'm not done talking.
yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is an important issue to the Standing Committee on Environment, because over the last 8 years, the Prime Minister, multiple environment ministers, and the entire Liberal government told Canadians that their punishing carbon tax was affordable. They claimed that increasing gas prices by 61 cents a litre was needed to meet their environmental targets. They claimed that increasing the cost of home heating was needed to meet their environmental targets. They claimed that increasing the cost of food production was needed to meet their environmental targets. And the most misleading statement on the carbon tax, that Canadians were going to get more money back than they pay. None of these statements are true. And even the Prime Minister has started to admit that his carbon tax isn't an environmental plan, it's a tax plan. The Prime Minister finally admitted that his carbon tax was unaffordable. Last week, after noticing that their popularity was sinking, the Liberals announced that they were implementing a temporary pause on their punishing carbon tax, but not for all Canadians. Only some Canadians would qualify for a tax break. 97% of Canadians would not. When asked why the carbon tax wasn't being removed on all sources of home heating in every province, the Liberal Minister for Rural Economic Development basically told Canadians living in the prairies that they were being punished because they didn't vote Liberal. That's a statement. That statement was one of the most divisive things I've heard since I've been elected. Mr. Chair, as members of the Environment Committee, we should be alarmed because for many years this committee has been misled by the government. The Environment Minister testified at this committee on March 27th of this year, and I quote, Canadians get more money back from
Point
the
of
federal
order.
government than
Is it a point of order? Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Wasn't it just 5 minutes that they had?
No, now we're off to the races on something else. So that 5 minutes doesn't count. The 5 minutes doesn't count. This is a whole new chapter. So
Talk for the whole hour.
So we're
so
not.
you can just interrupt a study.
Yeah,
and
you
do
can
this.
do that. Yeah, you can do that.
Wow, that's really quite rude. Okay.
Monsieur le
Okay.
Président,
We point out.
Yes, Chair. I would like to add something. This summer, I met with groups, and I have some questions I would like to ask. We have Transport Canada here. I would like to put my questions. I'm asking for some cooperation. Yes, point of order, yes.
Mr. Chair, as members of the Environment Committee, we should be alarmed because for many years this committee has been misled by this government. The Environment Minister testified at this committee on March 27th of this year that, and I quote, Canadians get more money back from the federal government than...
Point of order?
Yeah. Are we able to submit our questions in writing to the witnesses? Because I also had some questions I wanted to ask.
Actually,
around
that's it. I would just a moment. I'm going to pause for a second while I sort a couple of things out. Go ahead and do that and make that request.
It's only fair to the committee and to the...
Yeah, I understand, but we'll get back to you on that. Mr. Mazur.
The Environment Minister testified at this committee on March 27th of this year that, and I quote, Canadians get more money back from the federal government than what carbon pricing is costing them, end quote. Well, if Canadians were getting more money back than they paid, then why are the Liberals pausing their carbon tax on home heating? The Environment Minister also testified at this committee on May 3rd of this last year that a carbon tax, and I quote, is one of the most effective ways of reducing emissions, end quote. If the carbon tax is needed to reduce emissions, then why have emissions continue to go up under this Liberal government? Last year, on March 24th, the Environment Minister bragged about the carbon tax top-up for rural Canadians to this committee, and he stated, I quote, "There is clearly a rural lens applied to carbon pricing," end quote. If rural Canadians were considered, then why did his own government just admit that rural Canadians needed more money? Earlier this month, the government's own department testified at this committee that the Liberals' second carbon tax, the Clean Fuel Regulations, will disproportionately impact low and middle-income Canadians. The government knew that their second carbon tax would punish low and middle-income Canadians, but that didn't bother them. They plowed ahead with it anyways. Absolutely shameful. Never has it been more clear that the carbon tax is not an environmental plan, it's simply a tax plan. Canadians have finally called their government's bluff, and Canadians are counting on us to immediately abolish the carbon tax once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have Mr. Deltel, followed by Mr. Cram and Mr. Leslie and Mr. Vancouverton. You want to speak to this? Yeah. Okay. So I didn't see your hand. I apologize for that. Okay. Mr. Deltel.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have so rarely seen such a thing, a Prime Minister's announcement that has been criticized by everyone, including by the prior Minister of Environment, Catherine McKenna, an MP representing a district of Ottawa, who used to be a figurehead of that government, who defined herself as being the architect of the Liberal tax on carbon. That wasn't our appreciation of her situation, but we recognize that that's what she said she was. So, barely an hour ago, the Prime Minister had just made his announcement, and right away she was saying how sorry she was. A sincere expression of regret by someone who supposedly believed in these matters. That's not what we think, but she said she did believe that taxing carbon was a good thing, going and getting money out of the pockets of taxpayers. Certainly not our opinion, but she was the architect of the policy, which was applied by the current Prime Minister. And last Thursday, a Prime Minister, 8 years into his work, having announced the entire planet how important it was to tax carbon. I mean, he's really, just slipping in the polls. So he's decided to flip-flop and just solve the problem for a very small number of Canadians. No carbon tax. As we say back home, when someone has got two faces, there's four cheeks you can hit. When someone is being criticized by prior ministers, by citizens, by the other parties, then everyone's unhappy. That's the situation.
I'd like to correct the record that the carbon levy on home heating oil has been applied across the country, not just in Atlantic Canada, as stated by the member.
Deltel, floor is yours.
So I presume this is why the Premier of Saskatchewan said that they will not collect anymore the carbon tax, because this is totally unacceptable, because it is focused only on maritime people. And it's not me who say that. It's a Prime Minister press conference who show it very clearly. Qui a-t-on vu lors de cette conférence de presse du jeudi après-midi?
Who was at the Thursday press conference? Instead of being present at question period, he was just talking to the press. Only Liberal maritime MPs. Where were the Ontario people, the Quebec people, the Manitoba people, Saskatchewan? No, hang on, there are no Liberals in Saskatchewan. But where were the other MPs and ministers of Liberal governments? Nothing to be seen. Missing in action, Chair. They just were not there. And for a good reason, because it had nothing to do with them. And that's the situation of this improvised policy making based solely on the fact that the Prime Minister is just being beaten down in the polls. We saw that this weekend. The Minister of the Environment, someone whom I respect, who, as we say back home, is someone who goes up to bat. Question recently, where was he? He too, and he said very politely that as long as he'll be minister, there will be no further changes of that nature undertaken. A little more bluntly, he said, if the Prime Minister does this again, I'm just going to walk out on him. Again, I say that I respect our Minister of the Environment personally, and he's a tough adversary, and I like people like that. That's when we get work done. We also understand why he stood up to defend the position. I don't want to presume or speak for him, but I don't think he was very enthusiastic about it, nor was he enthusiastic about the idea of going ahead with Baie du Nord. But it was the right thing to do for the country. Even the minister is threatening. He barely. He almost said it out loud that he would walk out on the prime minister if he dares do this again. So you have the architect of the tax policy, the fiscal policy. It's not an environmental policy. It's a fiscal policy that invented, created, and brought in the carbon tax, who is not happy with it. You've got the current minister who has to apply it, and especially, has to now apply the withdrawal of the carbon tax for some Canadians, and both of them are most unhappy. What we've also seen, Chair, is provincial authorities going up for bat as well, representing the population, of course, who would have liked to have everything dropped, as we do. But at very least, when it comes to home heating in the winter season, that this apply to all types of heating. But no, the Prime Minister is just cherry-picking. He's chosen where things will support his political aims. That's not what a Prime Minister should do. I mean, the comments this weekend, people who, like the current Prime Minister and think that two fundamental elements, as of 8 years now, have been carbon pricing and First Nations, and now he's slipping on the carbon pricing. And I have to remind you that he insulted the entire population of the entire planet, beginning with us, if we didn't agree with him. But now, because he's slipping in the polls, flip-flop. This is why, Chair, we feel more than ever that anyone who feels that the carbon tax is having a horrible effect on Canadians in part of the country, well, we'll follow up saying clearly that it affects all Canadians brutally across the entire land. That's why a year ago, on the 20th of October 2022, we, the official opposition, held a full day's debate in the House of Commons on the issue of home heating during the winter in Canada. And we judged, and I think it's totally logical because the Prime Minister has now partly agreed with us just last week, we felt and have continued to feel that it's not a good idea to create, impose, and administer a new tax for a country in the middle of the winter on home heating oil, on home heating at all. And who voted against that a year ago? The NDP, the Greens, the government. We were standing alone in our opinion that it was not a good idea to bring in a new tax on home heating in Canada in the winter, just common sense. But what can I tell you? We're the only party that's got any good sense. So a Prime Minister who's got a partisan political approach, improvising announcements, standing up, with MPs representing a single area of Canada when he is the Prime Minister of all Canadians, well, he's created a division among ecologists, split up citizens, split up ministers, split up politicians, and Quebecers are paying really high prices for these policies. That's why we will continue to debate this motion. The Prime Minister really has to explain himself to us, taxing Canadians in the middle of the winter to heat themselves in their homes. Ugh, makes no sense. Mr. Cram, Mr. Leslie, Mr. Van Coubertin, would anyone else like to have their names added to the list? Ms. Chatel. Mr. Cram.
Chair, so for 4 years now, I have heard over and over and over again in my riding that the carbon tax has been making life less and less affordable for people, particularly when it comes to the cost of home heating. So I was very surprised at the announcement last week that the Liberal government was going to pause the carbon tax on home heating, but only for home heating oil and not for natural gas. So why would that be? Well, with a little bit of research, one can see that in Saskatchewan, all of the home heating is done with natural gas, whereas in the Atlantic provinces, it is primarily done with oil. So I think that that certainly raises some questions about why that decision was made, and I think the Liberals' Rural Economic Development Minister, Guddy Hutchings, explained it very clearly this weekend when she said that the prairies do not elect enough Liberals, therefore her government was not going to listen to the people of that region. It really is shameful that affordability and the cost of living is not a concern to this Liberal government when it comes to the people of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, simply because of the way they voted in the last election. So I think it's shameful, the level of divisiveness that this government has stooped to, and I fully support the motion moved by my colleague Dan Mazier. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cram. Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree. It's a motion worthy of support. I find it interesting that the tax began as revenue neutral, and then you were getting more back, and now it's being recognized that it is punishing Canadians and needs to be paused, or at least until there's an election where we can try to regain power and re-implement and quadruple the carbon tax. But when the polling is down, the Prime Minister scrambles to come up with, and perhaps if I was able to ask my question earlier, we could have found out that this was driven by departmental officials, but it seems a lot more like a political decision made when polling numbers are down. And it's so typical of this Prime Minister and his need to try to divide Canadians. And as my colleague across the way points out that the heating oil exemption applies across Canada, well, that's great. Only 97% of people don't use heating oil. We've picked and chose in an area in which there are a bunch of Liberal MPs that polling numbers are down, and we should provide some relief to them. But what about my constituents? What about people across the country that are sick and tired of paying a carbon tax? Now, I know that my colleagues haven't knocked on doors as recently as I have, but I will give you fair warning that in the next election, you will find that people despise the carbon tax, that people are hurting, that people and businesses and families are struggling to get by. And they know that this is a tax plan, not an environmental plan. They'll realize
Point
that...
of order, Mr. Chair? I'm sorry,
Taylor
can we
Roy.
correct a statement, or can we question a statement made in this?
It's
because how
well,
can a member say he knows that we have not been not knocking on doors
I
as
don't think
recently
we
as
can
he?
correct
I'd like to
it.
know how you know that, Mr. Leslie.
I was in a by-election more recently than your federal
I
election.
knock on doors regularly.
Order, please. Order, please.
That's
Order,
good. I'm
please.
surprised you're not more aware.
I suppose point of order has to be related to the rules, so it can't be used to counter statements, however false they may be or unproven they may be. So we'll have to. I'll let you continue, Mr. Leslie.
Mr. Chair, sorry, could I ask a question then?
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we counter a false statement or narrative
Well,
that's being put
when
out?
we get the floor.
Okay.
You want to be on the list?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I will say I was surprised very pleasantly that the Prime Minister did recognize the pain that his carbon tax is imposing on Canadians, that he climbed down from his high horse, at least long enough to pause it for certain Canadians. I hope he will come to his senses as prairie leaders and premiers and political leaders across this country are highlighting that it is unfair, divides Canadians. It's time to scrap the carbon tax, both 1 and 2, in its entirety, and passing this motion is a good place to start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I welcome the opportunity to correct some facts which have been, just bandied about by the members opposite for the last little while. I regret that I have to do this, but unfortunately, they are either willfully ignorant of the facts or extremely enthusiastic about misleading Canadians. The pause on the carbon levy on a product, home heating oil, is not specific to one region. Home heating oil is the dirtiest way to heat your home. It's extremely inefficient. I used to have an oil furnace in our house, and now we don't. And I can tell you with certainty, it's a far more efficient and less dirty way. It's like living in a cruise ship. A cruise ship runs on a similar kind of oil, and it's archaic. It's the way that we heated homes in the 1800s. We don't need to do that anymore. We've got better technology, and we're encouraging people to get off of home heating oil. But they keep saying that it's only specific to Atlantic Canada, and that's absolutely false. There are more people in the province of Quebec that use home heating oil than there are in Atlantic Canada. Quebec's a much bigger province. There's no federal carbon levy in Quebec, which is something my colleagues opposite consistently like to ignore. 20% of Nova Scotians use home heating oil, so there is a low-hanging fruit opportunity to correct that and to work with our neighbors in Atlantic Canada. And in order to work with them, we're giving them a little bit of a break on the cost of home heating oil, which has been inflated by lots of factors, including the war in Europe. And this is a good way to do that. 60% of Yukoners, Mr. Chair, still heat their homes with home heating oil, and these changes will reflect that. There's no improvement, there's no added benefit for Atlantic Canadians and any province or territory that would like to sign up for the for the heat pump program can, and other provinces have so far. Heat pumps are an extraordinarily efficient way of heating one's home. We are not living in the 1800s anymore, and we ought to work on the low-hanging fruit of home heating, which includes heating oil. And I'm proud that this government has taken that step. And for the record, being an MP in a rural community, I'm also thrilled that the members opposite always think it's hilarious that Milton's rural. I encourage you to come, Mr. Leslie. We might not be as rural as southern Saskatchewan, but we have lots of farms. I have lots of constituents on home heating oil, and I've been pushing for an increase to the rural top-up. And it's a welcome change because, indeed, it does cost a little bit more, and a 20% rural top-up is a welcome change for rural Canadians. Back to work.
I've got Madame Chatel.
Thank you so much, Chair. I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Deltel, for his appreciation of our Minister of the Environment. I agree with him. He is an excellent Minister of the Environment. As a MP representing a rural caucus, I can say that indeed there are many discussions about these topics in rural areas. It's not always easy for rural Canadians to transition to a way of heating their homes in a more environmentally friendly, more ecological fashion. Even for electrical vehicles, it's more difficult for them to transition to the new technology. And I think this has been the case for a few years. People in rural areas do need more time to transition. They need more support to transition, such as with the heat pump program, which of course is being applied across the entirety of Canada. It's important to underscore that. Of course, when provinces work closely with the federal government, this makes it easier for the federal government to offer financial support for heat pump heating. I hope that all the provinces of Canada will work to provide such programming to all Canadians from coast to coast to coast. I would like to see and check whether we could vote on the motion in order to return to our study. You are the last to speak on our list, so we could indeed move to a vote. Call the question. I imagine that we're looking for a roll call vote.
Hearing from our witnesses.
Yeah, but vote, and then we can do that. We can do that. Yeah, that's what I would suggest. So why don't we do that? Why don't we have the vote, and we'll still have some time. Mr. Cram, I think, has 30 seconds left. I'll be very strict on that. I'm sure you'll appreciate why. And then we'll go to Mr. Longfield.
Mr. Ali?
Against?
Madame Chatel? Mr. Longfield?
Against.
Ms. Taylor-Roy? Mr. Vancouverden?
Oh.
Mr. Dantel?
Pour.
Mr. Cram?
In favor.
Mr. Leslie?
In favor.
Mr. Mazier?
In favor.
Madame Posey?
Contre.
Mr. Backrack?
Against.
7 nays, 4 yeas.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
it's defeated. Mr. Cram, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to Mr. Wolfish. So does the Canada Water Agency's mandate include groundwater and specifically water drawn from wells for use on farms?
Very briefly, please.
Thank you for the question. We will not be taking over the responsibilities of others. NRCan is currently responsible for groundwater.
Okay, and I guess I'm out of time, Mr. Chair.
Pretty much. Mr. Longfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the officials for sitting with us through that. I hope we can get back to our topic of discussion now that we've cleared that off our table. 58, this is for Mr. Wolfish, 58 formerly pristine lakes around the Kenora area were managed since 1968. And in an unexpected and controversial move, in 2012, the Conservative federal government defunded the facility. It was the experimental lakes area, and now it's being managed by the International Institute for Sustainable Development. I believe they're also out of Winnipeg. And I used to canoe a lot in that area. I'm from Winnipeg originally, and knowing the importance of research on fresh water, I'm wondering how will the Canada Water Agency interact with IISD ELA?
Start with the answer, and then I will turn to my colleague to supplement the answer. But the first point I would say is that the experimental lakes did receive funding in Budget 2023 as part of the overall investment in the Freshwater Action Plan. In terms of our collaborations with IISD, they're based in Winnipeg. The headquarters of the CWA will be in Winnipeg. We've had conversations around collaboration and opportunities for training and growth and connections, and so that conversation will continue to happen as we proceed. And with the particulars around the experimental lakes, Arash, do you have anything to add, or should we come back with a written answer?
We can come back with a written answer.
So we'll come back with a written answer on this one, if that's possible.
That's going to be key. And as we look at Canada, that's going to be very key for other areas to learn from as well. And Ms. Liddell, maybe to start with you, that also relates to Ms. Blaise. When I was living in Manitoba, I did a lot of work on hydroelectric dams up the Churchill and Nelson River. Lake Winnipeg was the big reservoir for all the hydroelectric facilities, Lake Manitoba also, taking all the water from east of the Rocky Mountains into the watershed that ultimately fueled our power in Manitoba through the hydroelectric dams. There's always a lot of controversy about the lake level and how that lake level is managed, with Indigenous communities living on the lake, with other communities living on the lake, southern Lake Manitoba being flooded when the Manitoba Hydro would control the level of Lake Manitoba and Lake Winnipeg. How do we manage the hydroelectric needs of Canada at the same time as respecting the rights of Indigenous people and others living on our lakes?
Thank you for the question, and it's a really good question. I think there's not a simple and straightforward answer. I think that's one that involves multiple players and multiple considerations. I think I would actually turn it to my colleague in Ontario and Prairie region, who has some on-the-ground experience and kind of more specific to the question that you're asking.
Great, thank you. About a minute and a half. This is my last question. I'd love to. I know there's been a lot of history on this, but I think it would be important for our study to get some testimony.
Thank you for the question. The issue of water levels, of course, and water control is shared between Environment and Climate Change Canada and, of course, the province. Where DFO has an interest, or Fisheries and Oceans Canada has an interest, is when those water levels may have an impact on fish and fish habitat. So that's the extent of the Fisheries and Oceans responsibilities, and we work closely with our colleagues in the other departments.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Blaise? No more to add on?
No, I'll look to my colleagues on water level.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
I know we have a lot of experts here, and I appreciate your time and hanging in there with us.
No problem. We actively work with the provinces and territories to monitor levels and flows across the country through a cost-shared program. So those data, the data related to flows in systems where there are hydro facilities, are actively monitored and shared with the public.
So the hydrological data, the mapping, the forecasting of what would happen if we change our power requirements is all done through that?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The last piece there is,
yep.
So there is an agreement the master agreement on apportionment, and then the Prairie Province Water Board, which the Canada Water Agency actually houses the secretariat and helps chair the discussions, but that helps in the discussions around the apportionment of water through the basin across the 3 provinces.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair, for giving me 23 extra seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Longfield, for those questions. We're essentially at the end of our first hour. I was hoping we'd get 2 rounds in, but we only got 1 complete round in, which isn't bad. And I just want to, we're going to break now to switch into in camera, and we're gonna break to switch into in camera. But I want to thank the witnesses for making themselves available on 2 occasions to answer questions, and which were all good questions from all parties, I thought. And so I just want to thank everyone who's here and everyone who's online for making yourselves available today, in addition to last Tuesday. And on that, I'm going to Madame Posé.
Oui, je veux dire, est-ce qu'on était rendu à moi, dans le fond?
Non, on était rendu.
Non, on refaisait le tour.
On venait de terminer le premier tour.
Okay.
C'est M. Longfield qui a terminé le premier tour.
Okay,
Puis là,
donc
on était sur le point
tour.
d'embarquer au deuxième tour. Et puis, donc, c'est pas la peine vraiment. Il reste 1 minute. Là.
OK. Non, mais le deuxième tour, on recommençait 5-5, 2,5, c'est ça?
Oui. Oui.
Okay.
Oui. Alors, yes.
No translation.
Oh, there's no.
Terribly sorry, that was the wrong channel. Yes, so Ms. Posé was regretting that we didn't have a second round so that she would be able to put some questions. There not being enough time for a second round.
Suspend, sorry, not adjourn, suspend, because it is noon, and that's what the agenda calls for. So thank you again for being here, and we hope to see you again in the not-too-distant future. Thank you.